Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for stopping by Nicole Flower House. My name is Taryn, and I grow cut flowers in my garden and make garden arrangements and bouquets out of them. I'm located in Zone 7B in North Carolina. This week, the sweet peas and snapdragons are definitely the stars of the show. The garden is so seasonal. It teaches us about being patient and going with the flow, and I love that. My arrangements change with the seasons and with whatever happens to be blooming at the time. So right now I'm making things with tons of sweet peas and snapdragons and other things that just happen to be blooming right now. The dahlias have put on a lot of growth, and it's definitely time to pinch almost all of them. I know I said that last week and I didn't get around to it, so this week I need to do that for sure. Unfortunately, something is eating my sunflowers. The tops are chopped off and missing. And also on these other ones up in the garden beds, I have leaves missing. I'm getting a little desperate. I really want some sunflowers, so I think I might try planting some in containers and putting them on our screened porch so that no critters can get to them. The screen porch gets quite a bit of sun, so I'm hoping that'll work, but I don't know if I've seen sunflowers grown in containers before. Maybe in the future I can build some kind of protected area, a tunnel or cage or something like that to grow them in, but for now we'll try the containers. These snapdragons are absolutely beautiful. These are the ones I planted in the fall of last season. I wasn't sure they were going to do anything. They didn't seem to germinate very well. I just spread a bunch of seeds in this area. I didn't thin them or pinch them, and I'm really happy with the results I'm getting. These poppies were another experiment I did in the fall and winter where I just broadcast a lot of seeds into the garden bed. And again, I didn't thin them or do anything special. Now this poppy right here in the middle, I'm not sure what it is, but it is way bigger than the rest of them. I'm kind of hoping this is one of those bread seed poppies that leaves the big rattle in the middle once the petals fall off. These smaller poppies also leave behind really adorable seed pods. I have been using these in my arrangements, and the stems are really nice too. I like them because they're thin, they're wiry, and they bend in all kinds of different shapes. And it just gives your arrangement some texture and some light, airy elements that are whimsical. So even though the poppies themselves don't last very long, I'm still going to be growing these because I can't get enough of these little pods. I'm doing much better this season with getting all my seedlings out on time. Here are some that I still have left to plant though. These are more snapdragons and they're looking very good. I also have some eryngium. These are going to be perennials, so I'll have to find a more permanent spot for them. Here are some yarrow seedlings. I believe the color is white on all of these. And then up here in the front, these are called jewels of opar. It's another light shimmery filler that is just really nice. I have some echinacea that I need to plant. I know the plant tag says something else, but it's because it's backwards. I reuse them. And then I also have some eucalyptus seedlings here. These are bachelor's buttons. And then here are some more snapdragons and more eucalyptus. I'm really excited about the eucalyptus, and I'm trying to find a more permanent place for those. This willow is looking really good. I'm really tempted. I want to cut some of these and use them while they're green. Does anyone know? Leave me a comment if that'll damage the plants or not, because I know most, if not all, growers harvest these in the fall after they've died back. But I'm wondering if I just take one little stem off of each one so I can use it to make maybe some flower crowns or mini wreaths or something like that. At this point in the spring, all of my David Austin roses, even the new ones that I planted from bare roots, are showing buds, and I'm so excited about that. This one right here is called England's rose, and it has a very bright pink flower. This rose sits next to some chrysanthemums. This thyme is flowering, and I love when it flowers. It's so dainty and cute, and I like to drape it over the edge of the vases to give my arrangements a really nice scent. Another thing I've been using heavily is this oregano. I hope I didn't kill the plant because I cut a ton of greenery off of this to use this past weekend, but it smells so nice, and hopefully this bare spot will fill back in. Next to that oregano is another thyme plant. This one's not flowering yet, but it smells just as good as the other one. At the base of this trellis full of sweet peas, I have eucalyptus. Now this eucalyptus, like I've said in previous videos, has really made a recovery. It looks a lot better than it did. So now I'm wondering if I really should take this out, if I should try to move it in the fall, or what I'm going to do with it. I've actually been using it in arrangements, and I used it in the one that I show you at the end of this video. So I am still getting use out of it. But I think it would just do better in a different spot where it has more space and I can let these grow nice and big so I can eventually coppice them in the same way that I do my willow. On the edge of this dahlia bed, I placed some yarrow seedlings. Those are some of the seedlings that I showed earlier in the trays. So I still did make some more progress on getting some of those seedlings out into the garden. My Ranunculus this year are not performing as well as they did last year. The initial flush of blooms was really good, but they're not pushing out very many repeat blooms. I did have some trouble with the way I planted them this year, so hopefully that's what's contributing to that. And this fall I'll be sure to get them out on time so they can overwinter and be really strong for the spring season next year. Out of all the seedlings I've transplanted out, I think these ones are taking off the quickest. These are marigolds in the front, and then behind that are red spike amaranth. Now I've always had trouble with amaranth in the past. It seems to attract a lot of pests for me, and I've never been able to really use it because it gets super chewed up on the leaves, but I'm gonna try it again. And the one thing about having plants like that attract bugs is if all the bugs are attracted to that one plant, they'll leave most of your other plants alone, which I like. It's called having an attractor plant. So even if it's getting a lot of insects, sometimes I leave it if those insects are choosing the amaranth over my other plants. This right here, I would have to say, is one of my first successes in succession planting. These are bachelor's buttons. Now I've been cutting all season on the bachelor's buttons that I planted in the fall and overwintered, but these are seedlings that I planted in late winter, early spring, and they are about to flower. Here is some Orlea. This is one of my favorite filler flowers, and actually it's big enough that sometimes I do use it as a focal flower as well if I have enough of them to group together. Here is another look at that giant poppy that was in the middle of the bed. It is about to flower. I am really excited to see what this turns into. I'm thinking this poppy right here is the perfect stage for cutting for arrangements. I've been having trouble with getting the poppies to last very long, and I think I'm cutting them way too open. So I'm going to start trying to look through the patch very closely and catch them much earlier. Now here are the carnations. Every week I'm thinking that surely by next week they'll have bloomed, but here we are again and they still haven't bloomed yet. So we will just wait on them to see. I'm really excited. I have some white and blush pink and maybe even some champagne varieties. I'm starting to forget what those are. Now these are newly planted Snapdragon seedlings. They've been in the ground about 2 weeks. They're not doing too much, but they look like they might be establishing, and hopefully they'll put on some growth soon. These are my spring planted carnations. They've established well. And again, here are my fall planted carnations that I'm just waiting to bloom. Maybe it will be next week. Now this garden box right here is in absolutely terrible shape, and I was really excited as soon as the Ranunculus were done to tear this out, but somehow I have a dahlia in here. I don't know how I got this in here, but now I'm tempted to just leave this garden box because I love surprises and I would just love to see what this one is. Obviously I have no idea what the variety is, and now I'm curious. So what should I do? Should I leave that in there or should I fix that garden box up now? These are Dara seedlings, and behind that I have some lace flower, both pink and blue varieties, and then behind that I have some baby's breath seedlings. These seedlings look like they're doing okay. They haven't really established or put on any new growth since I've transplanted them, but they're hanging in there, so hopefully they will start putting on growth soon. Over along the fence here is another success in succession sowing. These sweet peas I put in the spring, and they're just now starting to flower. So the other ones that are in their full glory right now probably will only bloom for another week or so, and then these ones should pick up in their place. And I do need to get out here and get these tied back up to the fence, or train them through just like I did with the other ones. This seedling right here is feverfew. I have several of those in this box. Behind that I have some sage, which smells so good in arrangements, and behind the sage is some stock. In this garden box I have Phlox planted. I think these will be perennials. I need to go back and look, but they're very small. The flowers are very nice. I like them, so I'm wondering if I should have pinched these or if they'll get bigger throughout the season, or maybe they won't really take off till next season. I'm not sure. Behind that I have cilantro and parsley, which I plant just to get the flowers off of them. And over here in the corner is another shrub, and it does produce berries. I forget what kind it is, I didn't get berries last year, so maybe this year. The Cosmos seedlings are looking pretty good. They're going a little slower than I thought they would, but that's okay. We've been getting some rain, so maybe they'll put on some growth, and I think it's time that I can start thinning these. I kind of waited to thin them in case some of them didn't survive or got eaten by slugs or other birds maybe, I don't know, but I think it's time for that. This David Austin Rose variety is called Charles Darwin. This is the 3rd year I've had this rose in this spot, and it looks very well established and has flowers on it. There was one flower on this that was open and ready for cutting, which I did cut and use in the arrangement that I'll show you at the end of the video. Here are some lovely pink sweet peas that weren't blooming the first time I filmed the sweet peas. I love this quaint little spot in the garden right now because the pink sweet peas are right next to these coral ranunculus, and it's really pretty. This here is foliage from my chrysanthemums, followed by some chives. This is a second chives plant that I didn't show in the previous video. And then next to that, this is England's rose that you saw earlier with all the buds. And on the end of this bed, I have some chamomile. I haven't grown chamomile before. I tried last year and it just got really hot and the plants kind of cooked. So I'm trying them again. This right here is cilantro that has gone to flower just like I wanted. There's tons of flowers coming on this. I'm really happy about that. And last year I remember these flowers being white, so they look very green right now. Maybe I just need to wait a little longer. Over here, this is a Dara plant that I did in the fall of last year that overwintered. These flowers were purple when they bloomed for me last year. And just below this plant is another new David Austin rose. It's called Munstead Wood. It's a nice deep burgundy color. My calendula are still putting on a steady stream of blooms, which I love. I have a mix of yellows this year, some coral colors, and also some orange. In this bed of ranunculus, I have planted some of my summer seedlings so that they can get going while the ranunculus are finishing up. This one here is the Jewels of Opar that we saw earlier, and I also have some yarrow planted in here, and this one in the back, I forget what this one is. I'll have to look that one up. After this weekend, after Mother's Day, I'm going to be pulling out the ranunculus. It's just not doing that great, and I want to give those other seedlings some more space. Here is a look at my rain barrel system. I am trying to do rainwater irrigation, but I haven't done the plumbing yet on these barrels, and I'm going to do that soon. Just below the barrels, I have a few rows of zinnias planted, but I'm having trouble recognizing the zinnia seedlings versus the weeds. There are some weeds in here that look very similar to them. Here's one of those weeds. It looks just like the zinnia seedlings, but they stay pretty close to the ground. And so I'm thinking if I let the zinnia seedlings grow up nice and tall, it'll be easier for me to tell what is what. I'm really relieved to see these lavender plants that I have out here in the front putting on flowers. These were some of the victims of my seedling overload last year. I grew these from seeds and they sat in their seedling trays for way too long, and when I transplanted them out they looked terrible, but this spring they have really rebounded and are actually flowering. Right behind them I have a more mature lavender plant and it hasn't flowered yet, but it should be close behind these other ones. My magnolia tendril peas that I have growing along the fence here have started putting on flowers as well. I don't use these for the flowers, but for the tendrils, so I use the foliage in my arrangements. And here are all the flowers and greens that I harvested out of the garden this week. There are sweet peas, David Austin roses, both Strawberry Hill and also the Charles Darwin. I have Snapdragons and bachelor's buttons, all kinds of fun seasonal things. I've included some Orleia, some rosemary, oregano, and also a little bit of that lavender that we just saw. I made 2 arrangements that you can see here. I really love making homegrown seasonal bouquets straight from the garden. If you like to see pictures of flowers, you can follow me on Instagram. And that is all for today's garden tour. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, and the best way you can support me and my channel is to subscribe and share it with your flower loving friends. I'll see you next time. Bye.